In my video, Boiling Oil Aliens, I discussed a case in which a Brazilian man claims that he was nearly sucked up into a strange craft hovering overhead. Recently, I became aware of a case in the files of the Mutual UFO Network that was strikingly similar. It was May 31st, 1976, Livingston, California. The witness, who was only 16 years old at the time, went out at around midnight to his 100-acre field of grapes to change the water. At around 12:30 a.m., as he was about halfway through the job, he observed 3 separate lights moving over his neighbor's house on Bell Road. Unsure of what they were, he continued to watch in awe as the closest object in the line seemed to shine a bright light down onto the ground. The light then went off. The object moved about 50 feet to the north, and then the light came back on again. Like a 16-year-old kid that I was, I wondered what that could be. It didn't make any sound and had blinking lights going around it. I had a kerosene lantern in my one hand and a shovel in the other hand, so, like a dummy, I started swinging the lantern around and around trying to get their attention. That is when it came my way, right over top of me. When the object came over his head, the witness realized that what he was looking at was far from conventional. He became instantly frightened and attempted to run away. I took off running and dropped my lantern in the water and my shovel too. I made it about 30 feet when that bright light came on above me. I'll never forget that bright light. The witness claims that what happened next left him horrified. This may sound odd, but all the grapevines were going straight up. I grabbed the grape stump and post and wrapped my legs around it as well as my arms and hung on. It felt like it was trying to pull me up. That's all I remember. The bright light went off and the grapevine stopped going up and came back down. I let go of that stump and ran as fast as I could from whatever that thing was, across the backside of that 100-acre field to my house. The witness woke up his parents and told them of the encounter, but they didn't believe him. Instead, they insisted he return to the field and finish the task, which he reluctantly did. One thing the witness noted was that when he went inside to talk to his parents, the clock read 1 a.m. Given how many times he had watered the field, a task that generally took him about an hour to complete, and he was only about half finished when he sighted the objects, he had a pretty good idea of the time. Somehow he had lost from between 20 minutes to a half hour. In East Texas, C.L. Donaldson and his brother-in-law Kelly observed something terrifying while on a camping trip in the fall of 2006. It was so frightening that one of the men swore off camping forever. The 2 men had set up camp in the forest at the end of an old logging road not far from Kelly's home. It was around 9 o'clock at night when C.L. and Kelly were roasting hot dogs outside their tent. Kelly stepped away to use the bathroom. Seconds later, he re-emerged from the woods saying that he had seen some lights in the sky. He wasn't able to identify them. Regardless, their interest was piqued, and they decided to hop into their Jeep and set off down the logging road to see if they could locate the source of the lights. As they came around a bend in the road, they were shocked to see a large metallic craft hovering in the sky. CL brought the Jeep to a halt, and they sat staring at the object for several minutes. The craft began to move directly towards CL and Kelly. The lights from the object made it hard for them to focus on it, but CL saw that it was about 40 to 50 feet long and triangle-shaped. It swooped down until it was almost on top of them. Kelly became frightened and hollered for CL to get them out of there. The vehicle sputtered and died. Attempts to get it started were unsuccessful. CL realized that the object had landed on the road in front of the Jeep. The 2 men were absolutely terrified at this point and both bailed out of the Jeep. CL thought about running into the forest. Kelly yelled for him to get under the Jeep, which he did. For a long time, the 2 men lay breathlessly. As they worked up the nerve to peer out, they heard a strange noise coming from somewhere nearby. CL described it as sounding like somebody speaking. However, it was very high-pitched and in a language they did not understand. They heard the passenger door of the Jeep open, followed by more of the same strange talking. As CL twisted to see if he could see anything, the entire area lit up like a ballpark. He was able to see everything, like in daylight, but only this was brighter and more intense. CL then heard Kelly mutter a curse followed by a scuffle. CL suddenly felt an odd tingling sensation run through his body, and then everything went dark. The next thing CL remembered was waking up in the driver's seat of the Jeep. A very disoriented Kelly was seated next to him in the passenger seat. They were all alone in the darkness. The object that had so terrified them was now gone, as if it had never been there. They made it back to the campsite and decided to pack up and head for home. Neither could understand what had happened to them that night. However, some aspects they were able to recall over time. CL remembered waking up on a metal table and looking up to see figures standing around looking down at him. Kelly had a similar recollection, although both men admitted that the memories were vague, almost dreamlike. Since the event, CL no longer camps overnight in the woods. In his book Oz Files, Bill Chalker discussed a very disturbing case involving a man from South Australia who claims he was abducted into a strange craft by beings not of this world. Even more frightening than what happened to him is what he claims he saw on board the craft. Ben, a 38-year-old amateur paleontologist, was out with a female companion searching for fossils in the remote Sturt's Stony Desert in January 1974. At one point, Ben told the woman to remain at the car as she was unfamiliar with the area while he searched wider afield. About 2 kilometers from the car, he suddenly saw 2 figures wearing silver suits, both of whom were only about 1 meter in height, walking towards him. At first he assumed they were just 2 short, oddly dressed people coming to talk to him, but as they drew closer to him, he realized that there was something off about them. Whatever they weren't people. They had normal-looking faces and short hair, but their heads seemed elongated at the rear. Further, the length of their arms seemed slightly short for their bodies. When they spoke, it was in a rapid, unintelligible fashion. The 2 creatures beckoned Ben to follow them, and for reasons he could not comprehend, he did. They walked to a silver-colored craft shaped like a hot dog roll, about 8 meters long and 2 meters high. Ben could not understand how he had not seen this object before, as it was very clearly there, and would have been quite noticeable. The beings motioned for him to enter the craft, and Ben obliged them. The craft entrance was small, and Ben actually remembered having to bend down to get inside. This is when things got very strange. While small from the outside, inside the craft was vast. Ben simply could not understand how such a thing was possible. Inside the object, Ben observed other beings. They appeared to be similar to the ones he had encountered outside. The crew of the ship appeared to be, from what he could tell, mainly female. One of the strange beings offered Ben a drink, and because he was too frightened to say no, he promptly accepted and drank it down. Not too long after, he passed out. When Ben regained consciousness, he was laying on the floor of the craft. The 2 beings were still with him. For some inexplicable reason, Ben got the sense that he had been rejected for some purpose and felt discarded and ignored. While laying on the ground, he began to look around. He saw something that sent a chill up his spine. There, in front of him, he saw 2 Caucasian-looking girls, apparently human, dressed in normal attire, perhaps aged about 9 and 12, were in something like a cage. As he stared at them, Ben got the sense that they were in some kind of a trance. From here, Ben remembers a door opening and walking out. He was back in the desert in the same area where he had been earlier and began walking back to the car. According to his female companion, he had been gone for over an hour and a half. Ben has no idea who the 2 girls he encountered that day were, or what became of them. According to Australian ufologist Bill Chalker, who investigated the case, the entire experience left Ben greatly unsettled. Whatever these beings were, where they came from, and what they were trying to achieve remains a mystery. One has to wonder what might have become of Ben had he not been rejected.